What is up, guys? Eric here from Real Film Reviews, bringing you another movie review, this time for the new Rami Malek film, Bohemian Rhapsody. Bohemian Rhapsody is directed by Bryan Singer, stars Rami Malek, Ben Hardy, and Mike Myers. It tells the story of Freddie Mercury and the band Queen from the late 70s, early 80s upon their formation and then their later rise to pretty much like extreme fame, being considered one of the greatest bands of all time. The film primarily does focus on Freddie Mercury's life though, rather than exclusively on the band as a whole like a film like Straight Outta Compton did. This one is more specifically a biopic, but there is a lot to do with the band in it. I think the most talked about thing with this film is Rami Malek's performance. He really does give a very, very good performance in this film as Freddie Mercury. He's able to encapsulate sort of that insane enigma that was this man as this insanely talented performer, a fantastic singer, and all of these different things that put together make this person who there's nothing else that you could imagine Freddie Mercury doing except for being this performer and being arguably the greatest performer of all time in some people's opinions. Queen is also considered one of the greatest bands of all time in most people's opinions, and I think this film really captured that idea. As I said, I do think Malek's performance was really great, and I think that he will probably end up getting an Oscar nomination for it. I don't know if he'll really be in contention for winning, because I think that this film has some issues that I'll get to later that will hold back his performance from necessarily winning. But besides Malek, the whole cast of the film really does a great job. I was very happy to see that the film didn't single out Freddie Mercury and really just not care about anyone else. His bandmates do get a good amount of time. They get their own sort of elements to the story and how they play out in Freddie's life and how much they affected him as a person and helped him along his way, and I really liked that. But I think by far my favorite supporting role in this film was Mike Myers, who played this music executive who kind of was very opposed to the idea of Queen, but it's just so great to see Mike Myers in that role, because for one thing, we almost never see Mike Myers anymore, so getting to see him in anything is always fun. But I think the fact that he was so important in Wayne's World back in the day, when Queen was actually like a thing, and then him taking this role sort of as an homage to that is even better. The movie's obviously full of fantastic music and great concert sequences, but the thing that I liked almost even more than that were all of the behind the scenes of how the music was made, all of the weird experimental things that these guys were doing to make this music that is considered some of the greatest music ever made. And I think that that's the really cool thing that we get to see here, because when you think about the idea of making a song like Bohemian Rhapsody back in the 80s, you're like, in reality, you understand where these executives were coming from, where they're like, who's gonna play this? It's an opera song that has rock elements to it. Like, this is so weird. But when you see them making it, you're like, these are just four extremely creative minds who all of a sudden were able to come together and make sort of this music that is just a testament to how truly creative people can be with the medium of music. And I think that it was so cool to get to see that on screen. Bryan Singer is a pretty seasoned director, so the movie's filmed well. There's no real issues directing-wise, and I do have to give him extra credit, I guess, because the climax of this movie, like the big climactic sequence, is just fantastic. I think it's almost impossible for anyone to see the big climactic scene of this movie and not just have a giant smile on their face throughout the whole thing, because it's so well done in every single way. I do have a couple issues with the film though, the first one being that I think the first maybe half hour of the film, maybe 45 minutes, feels very all over the place and it feels really choppy. There's no smooth flow to it as the story's progressing or as the action is growing, as Queen is becoming a bigger band. I think that it just sort of felt like they were putting in all these different little facts about bandmates and certain people and how they got to where they are, just to try to like nonchalantly shove exposition in our face so we understood different things about the story rather than having them naturally come out over the course of the film. The film did eventually find its groove once we kind of got past that beginning just sort of shoving exposition down our throats part, but I think that that beginning part, I was very worried that this movie was going to feel entirely like that, and I was happy that it sort of got out of that funk. And then my other issue with the film sort of revolves around the way that they choose to tell Freddie Mercury's story. So for one thing, this movie's rated PG-13. I personally think basically any biopic that is about rock and roll and a person who actually lived it pretty much has to be rated R, because if you get PG-13, it's pretty obvious when you're watching the film that you're getting kind of a toned down version of what the reality was probably closer to. Now, that's not to say that the movie doesn't encapsulate some of those things, it doesn't capture some of those things, but it just sort of lacks the depth of them. And that was my big issue with the film, was its lack of depth. I felt like it focused in on Freddie Mercury for like the 2 or 3 things that everyone knows about Freddie Mercury. It didn't decide to go any deeper with his story and his family and his life and who he was as a person and what he struggled with. It instead decided to focus on sort of the facts about Freddie Mercury that everyone already knows, and I really wish that this would have been a more in-depth biopic. There are lots of things about his life that I'm sure I'm unaware of, but I feel like I learned almost nothing new about Freddie Mercury upon leaving this film. I'm not even that big of a Queen fan, but I left this movie going, yeah, that's pretty much what I know about Freddie Mercury, and I think the fact that a 2.5-hour long biopic about a person makes someone who isn't even that big of a fan of Queen or Freddie Mercury, I obviously enjoy their music, but like I don't know fun facts about them, I walked out going, huh, yeah, didn't really learn that much new, maybe learned 1 or 2 other factoids from a 2.5-hour long film about this guy's life. I really feel like it needed to focus in more on him and the effects that his fame had on his life in all of the different aspects, because I really would have loved to see a more dramatic telling of his story rather than one that just focused on the few things that everyone already knows. I'm gonna give Bohemian Rhapsody a B. I think if this film could have focused in a little bit more on the depth of the person that was Freddie Mercury and fixed a little bit of the beginning of the movie, this could have truly been one of the greatest films of the year, but instead it decided to go with a much more crowd-pleasing, lighter story about this man. And while the movie was definitely enjoyable and I recommend it to pretty much everybody because anyone can go see this movie and have a good time with it, I do think it does have its issues. Well guys, as always, I'm Eric. If you enjoyed this video, please do like, subscribe, comment down below what you thought of Bohemian Rhapsody, share everything we do here on Real Film Reviews, and hope to see you guys later.